I'm not sure how many of you are of 21 or older. I'm sure many of you have been exposed to alcohol when you were younger. Probably a lot of your families tend to have alcohol just all over the place. Today I want to kind of tell you why we should lower the drinking age to 18 instead of having it at 21. Not because, I'm just saying this is lower. But first off, once you turn 18, you can join the military, you can vote, which is a life decision-making process. Alcohol should be included. Also, other countries already have a legal age of 18 or lower. And also, another fact why we should lower the alcohol drinking age is because it wouldn't be seen as taboo anymore. Students wouldn't get fined $250 just because they were drinking underage. When you're 18, you can join the military. It's like I said, it's a life-changing experience. Not that once you turn 18, you're gonna die or something in the army. But the statistics show that 77% of 18 to 26 males in the U.S. Army pass away, and I think that is amazing to me. The fact that most of these haven't even had a drink in their life, so possibly. Moving on to other countries. In Spain, you can have a glass of wine when you're 16. Also, in Mexico, you can go to the liquor store and buy alcoholic beverages. You could just say it's for your father, and they would automatically sell it for you. The fact that in the U.S. It's seen as taboo, it's not, and fined on students or on young adults, shouldn't really be a factor in our society. I think it's something that the government has enforced on us. There was an article about underage drinking, and editor for law article stated that youth were able to purchase go to war when they're 18, and in conclusion, the fact that there's always going to be underage drinking, it doesn't matter what age you are. All that matters is if you are drinking responsibly, and should be educated on how to drink moderately through family members and stuff like that. So you don't have to, in other words, binge drink.
Yeah. They moved it up to 21 this year. For what? For smoking. Yeah. Oh, weed, I think
Alex, some opinions?
I thought, of course there were some things to show that she was nervous, like she was kind of moving, swaying a little bit, and then I feel like she could be a little bit louder, like maybe a little bit more confidence in her voice, but it was still like I could still understand her and hear her, like pretty good volume. And maybe could have used a little bit more sources or maybe another argument to add on top of the three she had. But overall, I thought she did pretty well. Like she had a pretty decent flow except for some few pauses.
All right. Well, we can start with the delivery issues. I do think that you need to speak a little bit more forcefully. Your voice drops out every time you are uncertain. You just get quieter and quieter. At the end of the speech, it sounds like you were, turning the volume down on the radio and disappearing. And you need to kind of finish strong. And instead, it comes across, I think, in a very passive way instead of the more active way that would give us a good impression of how confident you are in your argument. Your eye contact's a little bit inconsistent, and there is some anxiety being indicated by some of the gestures that you're doing. You do this nervous thing with your hair where you're kind of straightening it and pulling it while you're speaking, and maybe it would be best to wear the hair back or tie it back so it's not right there, a convenient distraction. Although then you might be playing with your vest, or you just got to be, I think, a little bit more aware of those sorts of things. I thought you started pretty strong with a point of view, and there was a preview of where you were going, so that I felt solid about. And in the body of the speech, I think you signposted your first point, and your second point as you got to them. Third point sort of disappeared. The selection of those points, the first one is okay. This argument that says that there's you don't say it this way, but basically it is you are an adult at 18, you get a whole bunch of responsibilities at 18, and this is one of the privileges that should come with those responsibilities. If we're able to make the decision to join the Army or to vote or to serve on a jury or any of those kinds of things, then we should be considered responsible enough to make the decision about drinking, and I think that that's okay. You kind of get sidetracked on this issue about military service, and I'm not sure that your data is very clear or that it's clearly cited. You have a piece of information that says 76% of the people who go into the Army pass away. Well, actually 100% of everybody who goes in the Army passes away eventually. The question is, do they pass away while they're in service? And that number seems really high. I don't think that it's an accurate piece of information. There's not really a source citation for it, and it's not really the point that you're trying to make anyway. The point you're trying to make is you're taking on a life or death responsibility when you serve in the military, and if you are mature enough to make the decision to take on that responsibility, then you ought to be considered mature enough to make a decision about how you're going to treat yourself. And I think that's the argument that you want to be making. Same thing with other responsibilities like serving on a jury or voting. I think those could be equivalent kinds of ideas. They don't really get developed much, and like I said, you kind of got sidetracked on this other direction on that particular point. The notion of other countries, that you can drink wine when you're in Spain at 16, well, that's nice. By the way, just to dispel any misunderstandings, you can drink wine when you're 16 in California too. You just can't do it in a restaurant. You can do it at home. So the question then becomes, how important is it to be able to have public access to alcohol? And there's not really much explanation about why that is important. The story about Mexico suggesting, well, they'll sell it to you if you just say it's for your father. Yeah, I don't know what else you're going to get in Mexico just because you went down there to get it, but I'm not sure that that necessarily is the standard by which we ought to be judging our situation here. One of the things that's missing is a discussion about why the United States is different than other places in the world. You don't have any historical context on this. You don't tell us why the rules are this particular way. And I think that that means that you're going to miss an important bunch of arguments and reservations that somebody listening to this might have, assuming that they had any of that particular knowledge. And I think that that's a bit problematic. You know, at one time, for instance, the drinking age was lowered by a number of states for the very reasons that you mentioned, and there's no contextual explanation about why it changed again. You make it sound like the government imposed this. The government, of course, did pass rules to incentivize the states to raise the drinking age back up to 21, but they did so under public pressure. And you don't really talk about what the public pressure was. And like I said, there's not really any historical context here, so that makes it, I think, a little bit less convincing as a consequence. All right, thank you.